Okay? Okay. So we're gonna start. Welcome everybody to this version. Well, this is not the first session of the day, it's the second. But welcome everybody. Thanks for spending your time here with me. We are almost in family, so it's always something good. Welcome to this session is architecting multi-market and multilingual sites, Drupal sites. The original title was much longer, but didn't fit on the slide. So basically, it summarizes what we are going to talk about. So I want to I would like to be really transparent with you. So I will tell you what to expect from this session and what is not expected. So first, I'm going to explain one approach to face this common situation in which you have multi-markets, multi-languages, but there are many on the market. So depending on the context that you are facing on your concrete project, probably this is not the best option for you. I will explain our context, but this is for you, this is one drop on the sea, right? So next, I would like to cover really common situations and how to face each of them. Because for me, the most important thing for me is that you learn the common approach, and then you can check by yourself on deep if it is really the option for you, if it is not. But at least you have the general idea, the pros, the cons, why. So that's the key for me. And yeah, something to be expected is me speaking really fast because time is limited. Now we are late, and we have a lot of ground to cover. So let me introduce very briefly myself. I'm José Luis Bellido, software engineer, and I'm really focused on the backend side of life. With more than 10 years of experience working with Drupal and other technologies, I like to think that I'm an active member on the community. I was part of the Drupal Developers Days in Seville in 2017, other minor events, but yeah, I like very much being in contact with the community, and being here for me is a privilege. You have there my GL Bellido is my username on Slack on Drupal.org. And I have also a podcast. I usually talk with Jesus, one friend of mine, really relaxed way about Drupal things, so yeah, that's something. And I'm really lucky because I'm working from my hometown in a really small town, but very beautiful, in the north of Cadiz, and that's thanks to Kokomor. Without them, I wouldn't be on that privileged place, and also I'm really happy working there. We are an agency with which the headquarters are in Frankfurt, but we have offices, and most of us are working remotely, so we are remote friendly. And I'm really happy to be there. So let me give you a little bit of context before we really start, because without it, you will not know why we chose that option. So previously, we did a similar session at DrupalCon Prague last year, but it was mostly focused not on the technical part of the project, but mostly on organization, how to the client relationships. But the part of the IT was really small. It was 2 slides, and I had to run a little bit. So you have there the QR to the session on YouTube. Based on the questions and the talks that we had after the session, we realized that there are so many people there working and faces these kind of scenarios. So I wanted to go a little bit deeper on the technical point of view to help others, because I realized that at that moment that we are facing the same context, but on many different ways. So I wanted to share with you this in deep, just in case, hopefully it helps you. So first of all, the scenario is that we have a distribution, a Drupal distribution, which is used to do several installations around the world. So each of those cycles that you see in there, they are Drupal installations of the same distribution. So our team, charge is to maintain that distribution, providing new functionalities which will be deployed on those unknown sites. That's the key. From one to another, they are, as I said, different Drupal installations. They don't share any content between them, right? But truth said is that they share content on their internal markets, for instance. Installation, but in our case, we just wanted to use the same distribution for everything. And for them, it would be easier for them to maintain in the future instead of having two different kind of sites, let's say. So so now let's talk about the key part, I would say, is setting the rules of the system, because this part of the session will mark the path of the overall project. So if you make a mistake here, you will see a lot of progress in the future that you don't see at the very beginning. So for me, the rules are define what's the market, define how to detect the market, how to manage the user permissions, and how do you handle the language restriction for market. So that's the 4 points that you need to have really clear how to overcome them in order to don't get into trouble. Well, you will get into trouble for sure, but you will survive. First, market definition. So we base the solution on domain. Domain at the end is an ecosystem of modules that allows you to define a group of affiliated sites in the same Drupal installation. That's the key, right? So you can, if you go to one domain or another, you will see that they are completely different sites, but they are the same Drupal installation. They share content, and you have at the end, thanks to all the contributors, you have an ecosystem of modules that you can use in order to overcome those problems that we saw at the beginning of the session. So, yeah, how do you define a market? So basically the domain, what you have in a specific site, you have a content entity, which is domain records, and with domain records you are able to define each of those. So basically the important fields when you are defining a domain is the host name, basically which is the URL that we are going to use, right? And others are not that important, but you may know that you can choose also the scheme, it could be, well, it doesn't make sense over there, but you have the option. So basically only with this you define the different markets that you will have on the Drupal site. Nothing else than that. This has an impact on the content editing process. Why? Because once that you start the module, you will see that there are a couple of fields on your content type, on those that you want to active this functionality. And with that, you will see a list of checkboxes where you can assign what content will be visible on each market, right? So that's the key. That's where the magic is done. Basically, under the roots, what is done is, for the case of nodes, it is using node access and node access records. So all the magic is done there. This is in case you are curious about how it is done. And also we have a second field on the bottom is just to check. I want to make this content available on all markets, so you don't need to check everything. It's also good in case you add an additional market afterwards. So it's already covered by that option. So as I said, it's an ecosystem of modules. When you don't know, like we have proposed the modules, you have several sub-modules at the same time. Domain access are the ones that I've shared with you before. I have 4 or 5 more. For me, the most important ones are domain config, because this submodule of domain allows you to override configuration per market. We will see a real use case afterwards, but this is really, really handy. For me, that module said how it's done a day, and several times. So, and then we have domain content. Domain content is a submodule as well that provides you some default views in order to make more easy to handle the content for each of the markets. We will see later in detail, but yeah, just to let you know. Yeah, and I encourage you to see the others, but yeah, it's really amazing the work that they have done. Now, next point on the setting up the routes of our system is how we detect on which market we are, right? So basically, by default, what domain provides us is detection based on different domains. It also allows you to have subdomains, so you can play around with not standard ports. So that's the flexibility in terms of defining which is your market that you have by default. But it's really common to see that you want to have different markets based on country prefixes, right? So imagine the common situation. Imagine that we have a destination of Drupal in Europe. Instead of having URLs like the one that we see on top, example.es for a case of Spain, or example.de in case of Germany, we want to have the same domain but different country prefixes. As we saw before, by default you are not able to do that. But again, thanks to the community, we can count with country path. Country path is a module that allows you to define, as you can see here, you can define /AR in the case of the installation of Latin America for Argentina. You can define, okay, this is my market for Argentina, and you do the same for other countries. The two steps that you need to do in order to configure it is on one side your like we saw, and the other one is in case as we are the language negotiation, you need to have an additional plugin. There is the country path language handler. So you need it in order to detect the language for your market. So with those two pieces, you are done. Next point on the setting up the routes is user permissions per market. So by default, the module, what it allows you is to, it has permutations for content type, and create new content, delete any content, edit any content, and on assigned domains. On assigned domains is the key, because you are able to assign editors to concrete markets, to concrete domains, right? So with this, for instance, an example is article, create new content on assigned domains. So you will see a long list with all your content types, with each row like that, right? So that's the key. For sure, you want to pay a lot of attention on this point, because restricting the access to editors is something that you don't want to grant access to someone that shouldn't, right? So it's important. And also we have some general permissions you see on the top, on the bottom. But yeah. In addition to that, as I said, how you can assign editors to certain domains, to certain markets. So when I say domain or markets, more or less it's the same, right? Except when in terms of the URL, right? So so basically, when you go to admin people and you see on the bottom, you see the actions allowed, so you can check, okay, these users, these other, assign it to the domain, to the column. Anyway, so in that way, users with privileged access can make their own team, right? So in that way, they can build these bubbles that we talked before. And here with domain content, you have two views that you can use on your daily. So first one is the list of editors per market. So here we see the example of Argentina again. So you, instead of having a filter for filtering by the market that you are looking for, you have directly a dedicated view for that. So you can send this URL to a client, and they do the rest. Same with the content. So how can I handle, or how can I know where my content is in terms of markets and submarkets? So you have also additional view where you see on in this case, only the content that is assigned to Argentina. But in addition to that, you see that it can be assigned to other markets. So they are sharing content, right? So language restrictions per market. So again, the requirement is having different languages per market, and they cannot have access to a language out of their market, right? That's the key. So we have two options. First one, domain language. This module, what it allows you is to per domain, per market, you are allowed to define the different language and which languages are allowed inside that market. So in that way, again, you build these bubbles, and that's it, nothing else. Problem is that it doesn't handle the language negotiation. So even though you are able to assign languages to market, your site is not capable to see what language you are based on that. So because of this, we had to use domain language negotiation. On versions before 3.0, you will need domain language, the module that we have seen, plus this one. Nowadays, over the version 3.0, it's independent, so you don't need that. You don't have this dependency, and the only difference for you is that you have also a language negotiation plugin, domain language, and that's it. The important thing is that you put it on the right order. So first goes the domain language, then the country, and finally the URL. So now that we have set up the roots of the system, as you have seen, since we chose domain, we need to go around domain all the time. So from now on, what we'll see is that how you face common situations, common features on your site, but working with domain, right? So the first one is, the first challenge is how you can define, for instance, let's imagine this scenario. So again, the site of Latin America, we have Argentina, we have Venezuela. For Argentina, we have one language, which is the localized version of Spanish, ESAR. And for Venezuela, we have the same. We have the localized version of Spanish for Venezuela. But we don't want to have the language on the URL. We only want to have the country prefix. But how you can define that? Is that when, as you may know, when you go to the language negotiation, you cannot put on two languages that they don't have any prefix. So the system says that it is only allowed for the default language, not for any other. How we can solve this? Very easy, thanks to the community, because we have domain config. Remember that module that I talked at the beginning about able to override configuration per market? So this is the one common used. So basically, what you need to provide is a configuration following the following pattern. Is domain.config, then dot your domain, dot the config that you are overriding, right? Then for our case, what we wanted is to override the language negotiation configuration and have different values per market, right? On the left side, what you see is the case for Argentina, where you see that it is empty, right? The row for Argentina, Argentinian, and then in the case of Venezuela, we have empty the row of ESVE, right, for Venezuela. So the system is loading one configuration or the other depending on the market that you are, and problem is solved. This is also really handy when you need to define different site names per market, different emails per market. All of that situation that you see that you have different configuration and they differ from one market to another, this is the right approach if you work with domain. It also provides a config, domain config UI, and you can see what config is overridden for you and on which market. So you have an idea, because at the end, controlling that 2 weeks after, you don't remember. So it's really handy. So next topic is having different sitemap XML per market. So you have, again, your same site, but you want to display only links for the market on which you are, right? So we base the solution on simple XML sitemap. Why? Because it's really easy to use, really flexible, we will see why, and it is really well integrated with languages. And also we have experience with it, so, right? So here you are the URL to the module. So basically with simple sitemap, simple XML sitemap, what you have is two main areas. First is you have sitemap types. So where this is when you are the two default site types. So basically you define how to detect the URLs in order to put them on your sitemap, right? So by default, the common use case is using the first one, the default, and it has some URL generators. Again, these are the methods, they are plugins, so you can extend them, you can provide your own. So at the end, it's a way to detect URLs and how to display them on the sitemap. Once that you have the sitemap types, you can create different sitemaps, right? And you associate one sitemap to each of the site types, right? Usually, what you usually do on a usual project is you only have the default. With the default, it's and you index all your content in there. So, all common use case. Problem is that this approach has still some impediments in our context. The first one is the URL generator is not aware about the domain countries, about the country path that you mentioned. So it's not able to restrict which URL is displayed on which sitemap, right? So that's one thing. Another problem is that you are not able to associate one sitemap type to a domain, right? So for instance, in case you want to have different sitemaps, you need to make that association, right? So by default, you are not able to do that. And finally, you want the module provides a way that it displays one sitemap or another. You can play around with it with hooks and everything. But the problem is that since we are not able to associate domains to sitemap types, we are also not able to display one sitemap or another depending on the market that we are. That's why we use domain sitemap module. One important thing is that you will need to apply this patch or one of the patches that you see on this issue. It is still not closed, but I think it worked perfectly, so some will get merged. Yes, thank you. So yeah, that's it. So what's the difference that we have once that we install the module? So this is the default scenario that we saw before, and what changes is that for our case we need to define one sitemap type per market, right? So and also the module is providing us a domain entity URL generator. This way to detect the URLs does all the magic. So the only thing that we need to do is create different sitemap types, associate them to each of our markets, and then create one sitemap of each of the types, right? You can see the difference between the previous, not the previous slide, but at the beginning. Here you see that the link count is different from to another. Why? Because now we are indexing different URLs per market. So in the case of Argentina, they have 205 content nodes or whatever, but another country, they probably have more or less. So now we are really making a difference. Other challenges that we have to face. So how do you integrate with Search API? Because by default, content restriction works with normal views, because the way that is done works perfectly. Problem is that when you are indexing content, how do you make aware, how Search API is aware about your domains? So, and also you need filters, specific filters to be applied to your views in order to show one content or another, because the content is not coming from the database. Well, it could be, but the problem is coming from a search engine instead of your usual database, right? So thanks to domain access search API, you install it and you have already the filters. The important thing is that don't forget to index the fields that domain access and domain all creates on your indexes, because if not, it doesn't do anything, right? So that's the important thing. Other challenges that are important, we saw before how to handle having different language negotiation, and we saw that it also applicable to have different site names per market. So again, it's using domain config. Then domain is also integrated with conditions. So you will see on all your site, when you work with blocks, when you work with anything that works with conditions, you can restrict the accesses to that entity, content entity that you are working on to market level. So it's already integrated, you just need to use it in case you need it. For instance, typical case scenario is you have a block that is only visible on one of the markets, not on the other, even though they are using the same page, whatever, right? Finally, the domain by default works only for nodes, but we have also domain entity. Domain entity extends this functionality to every single content entity that you have defined on your site. But the approach in terms of how it is done in the roots, in the code, it is not using node access records. It is done by altering the queries and making sure that the queries that perform the accesses, alters them in order to make them work. About robots.txt, also we need probably some markets needs additional or restrictions that other doesn't. So domain robot.txt allows you to define, and also editors can do it by their own, so they don't know you, they don't need you, and this is really easy to use. For me, those scenarios, others are probably, you will probably need, in case you have a really particular use case, the API provided by domain is really easy to use, so you can extend it thanks to the plugins provided by Drupal, so you can adapt it to having the domain context at hand. So, yeah, I think I do not see any problem with that. Final tips. Even though we are able to provide different configuration per market, use it with moderation. Why? Because it is really easy to provide one configuration to another depending on the market, but what happens if that configuration is completely different from one market to another? Handling that in daily basis is really hard. So I would recommend you to use it, mostly because it's hard to maintain at the end, right? We are providing config YAML files, at the end you need to maintain them, so just because of that, not because it is really hard to use. Make it everything configurable, because it is really common to see that some markets suddenly wants that feature working on for you. So if you have somehow it hard-coded, the option to enable it, don't do it. Just provide a easy form for you and click, and that's it. Right? It will save the day. Check all the existing domain extensions. That URL, you have them. There are plenty of them. Probably it's easier to check them before you doing your own module. And yeah, contribute back to your fixes. It is increasing every day and bugs are being detected, but yeah, feel free to contribute back anything that you find. And yeah, before we start with the questions, I would like to thank really hard to the sponsors, platinum sponsors. Because really, without the sponsors, you are not able to organize anything and be in touch with people. And also gold, silver, and bronze sponsors. Thank you very much to them. And yeah, so it's time for questions. Now it's your turn. In case you have anything, you can ask in English, you can ask in Spanish, so feel you free.
I have two actually.
Well,
is there a microphone or?
No, I will repeat your question.
Okay. We use something very similar. There's two issues that we faced. I'd like to know if you found a way of resolving it. One is we'd like to have different modules activated or deactivated in different domains. Have you had that issue?
No, that's something that we had also the case, and what our approach was to, because core extension YAML where they store which module is enabled where, I wasn't really afraid to have different versions per market. What we did is to have both enabled, but control by configuration if it is really working. Meaning, even though you have it enabled, we have somewhere in the administration just to really allows the module to work or not. But what's up? No, we didn't do it. Sorry. We were lucky and we just have them all enabled. Even they are not using them. Because the dependencies is your problem.
Okay. The second question was how you handle caching. So
Yeah.
if you have content that's being shared between different domains.
Yeah, so one thing that you need to do is on your services.yaml, you need to add an additional cache context, which is a by URI. So based on the context, different records are stored on your cache storage.
But that's to separate the caching so that it doesn't collide, right?
Yeah, because at the end you have different contexts. So it's the same cache tags but different contexts, so they don't collide.
Yeah, my question was about clearing cache. So let's say you're in one domain,
You are not.
clear the cache for another domain.
No, I didn't do it.
Okay.
So probably it's possible, I don't know, but I didn't do it.
Okay.
At the end, you need to play around with the cache context. I don't know if you are able to clear the cache for certain set of cache context, but at the end, it's like that. Yes.
I haven't used it for a couple of years now, the domain system. And one issue that we faced at that point was that the different markets had an issue that you mentioned, kind of. That is, they had different blocks.
Different blocks.
Yeah. So, for example, they had different footer with different menus used, whatever. What was the issue? That we had like 8 sites, and the block layout was impossible to use.
Yeah.
Because we had a lot of information of the different types of markets.
Yeah.
Is there any way, or there has been any update on that, so we can filter by domain or something that you know?
We didn't have that situation because for us, the main areas in terms of layout are the same from one market to another because they wanted to be sure that the experience from one market to another didn't differ that much. For your scenario, yeah, the problem is for you the layout having those because at the end you need different blocks, right?
Yeah.
And you have this list of here. So the only option that I see is instead of using the layout, you display the block on Twig and you control the accesses. But that's the only thing that I can imagine right now. So I don't know.
The only way that we find kind of solution was to use different things.
Different things, yeah.
That's the only way of filtering, let's say.
Yeah, that's also a good solution. Yeah. Yeah, that's a good solution as well. Yeah. Yes?
You mentioned the country paths thing, and in your example you had that for each country you only had a single language, but you can also have the case where you have multiple languages
Yeah.
per country, and then the normal Drupal language negotiation just works in addition to the country path?
Exactly.
Ah, okay.
Yeah. In addition, yeah. It is for us it's the case of the MENA region, Middle East region. For instance, we have countries like Lebanon, where it's probably I'm mistaken, sorry for that, but French and Arabic and other languages, and they are differentiated by the URL, so it works perfectly. We didn't find any issue with that.
So the first path is like the country and then slash.
Yeah, exactly.
or-
Exactly. First is the country and then the language.
What do you think about the groups module?
That's something that people talked us on DrupalCon Prague, that they are using groups for this kind of scenarios. I didn't test it by myself. The only thing that I would like to check is how it is handled, the detection of the market using groups. I don't know if it is done by URL or how it is done exactly, because
We are using the domain context, but we have to do it manually. I mean, we have to create the custom code.
all right, okay.
Checking the domain and then matching with the group.
Yeah, because the content restriction, I think it works very the same, right? So you say what content is displayed on where, but yeah, last time I checked it, you needed a content to be your source, right? For instance, I don't know. We don't have any for instance, we don't have any country node. Let's say we don't have a node saying this is Argentina, and everything that is under Argentina is this group. We are not doing that, but yeah.
We did that because the client wanted to promote the sub website. We had you could create the sub website
Uh-huh.
and handle them.
So they create their own sub websites on the fly by themselves.
Yeah, we started.
All right.
We
Interesting.
were calling the API.
Yeah.
And we were creating the site.
Really interesting. For us, no, we have defined them beforehand, and in case they need any other, we provide them, but they don't have that power.
I just wanted to know if it's a better solution to use the domain model and the groups.
To be honest, I don't know, because I don't have experience with groups, so I cannot tell you sadly. Yeah.
I have seen that the definition of a market is a relationship one-to-one in a domain.
Yeah.
Is there any way of creating a market that is related with more than one domain?
One of the modules that we saw at the beginning that as sub-modules domain is domain alias. With domain alias, you are able to define several URLs that match with one single market. So we use it because the URLs from the test environment from live are different, right? So we use that submodule in order to say, okay, this URL, which is our test environment, and this is the live environment, both URLs are going to this market. So in your case, it will be the same, but live URLs. Yeah, really handy as well.
You try this module with web forms?
You mean?
With the access, with the same with the rest of entities?
No, we don't have a data case. We use a scenario. I don't know if it is integrated with conditions, but I don't know if you see anywhere on forms to which I don't know if the block that is provided by web form, but I don't know. To be honest, I don't know. I didn't check it. Probably I know that there is a domain web form over there, but I didn't check that module. To be honest, I don't know if, even though I don't know if it exists, but there is always something integrated with web form, right? There is always something in there. More questions? No? You can pick me everywhere. I don't bite yet. Well, I don't bite. And if you're interested, other talks from one of my colleagues are happening today at 6:30 about layout paragraphs. Tomorrow, 10 a.m. in the morning, learning the basics of web. And at 4:30, we have Manuela, our CTO, talking about how to jump into the management position. And that's it. Thank you very much for being here. And yeah, see you around. Thank you.